You're watching Global 10 News, bringing you today's top global stories. This matters because it links violence on the ground in Latin America with political messaging in the United States, and together, they shape how Washington responds to instability close to home. In Venezuela, a series of bombings targeted public infrastructure and government-linked locations. Authorities say the attacks were meant to create fear and signal that the country's long-running political crisis is entering a more dangerous phase. Venezuela is already struggling with economic collapse, power shortages, and deep political division, and these explosions highlight how fragile internal security has become. The government blames extremist opposition elements, while critics accuse the ruling system of failing to control unrest or even using the incidents to justify tighter crackdowns. At nearly the same time, former U.S. President Donald Trump delivered a speech that directly referenced chaos in countries like Venezuela. He framed the violence as proof of what he calls failed socialist systems and weak borders, tying foreign instability to U.S. domestic concerns such as immigration, energy security, and regional influence. His message was aimed squarely at American voters. But it also signals how a future U.S. administration might approach Latin America with a tougher, more confrontational posture. What's at stake is regional stability. Venezuela sits near key U.S. shipping lanes, affects oil markets, and drives migration flows north. If violence escalates, pressure on neighboring countries and on the U.S. will increase. The next thing to watch is whether the bombings trigger harsher repression inside Venezuela or draw renewed diplomatic or economic action from Washington. It's a reminder of how quickly a quiet, ordinary setting can turn into a serious criminal investigation, and how questions around safety at home still hit close to Americans everywhere. In Ohio, a married couple was found killed inside their home, triggering a full-scale response from local law enforcement. Police were called after concerns were raised when the couple could not be reached, and officers discovered both victims deceased inside the residence. Authorities have confirmed this was not a random accident, and they are treating it as a homicide investigation. Right now, investigators are working to determine exactly what happened inside the home. They are examining the scene for signs of forced entry, looking into the couple's recent activity and speaking with neighbors, family members, and anyone who may have had recent contact with them. Officials have not publicly identified a suspect or confirmed a motive, which suggests the case is still in its early and sensitive stages. What's at stake here is community trust and safety. When a violent crime happens inside a private home, it raises concerns about whether the threat was targeted or if there could be broader risk. Police say there is no immediate indication of danger to the public, but they are urging anyone with information to come forward. The next key development will be whether investigators identify a suspect or clarify whether this was a domestic-related incident, a targeted attack, or something else entirely, as more details are expected to emerge in the coming days. A routine private flight ended in tragedy in broad daylight, spotlighting aviation safety and how unexpected dangers can unfold even far from major cities. A private helicopter carrying 4 people crashed Friday morning in a rugged mountainous area near Telegraph Canyon, east of Phoenix in Arizona. All 4 aboard, the 59-year-old pilot and 3 young women in their early 20s, who were family members, were killed when the aircraft went down around 11 a.m. local time after departing from Pegasus Air Park in Queen Creek. Emergency crews couldn't reach the remote site for hours because the terrain is so difficult. Preliminary reports from authorities suggest the helicopter may have struck a long slackline, a recreational line strung between points for balancing, like a low tightrope that was positioned more than a kilometer across part of the mountain range. A witness told dispatchers they saw the aircraft hit the line before it fell into the canyon. But investigators from the Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board are still working to confirm exactly what happened and whether the line's placement was legal or marked. This is at stake not just for the families and community grieving this loss, but for aviation safety more broadly. Officials will want to understand whether this was a freak accident, equipment issue, or an avoidable risk that could shape future guidelines around recreational gear in flight paths. While it doesn't pose a direct threat to the general public, what comes next will include a formal investigation and potential safety recommendations, something pilots, regulators, and outdoor recreation groups will be watching closely as more details emerge over the coming days. President Trump has just paused increases on several key tariffs, a notable shift from his earlier aggressive trade stance. Tariffs on imported furniture, kitchen cabinets and vanities that were scheduled to jump sharply are now being kept at 25% and one to rise until at least January 1, 2027. A delay, the White House says, reflects progress in trade talks with partners and concern about rising costs for U.S. consumers. At the same time, proposed extreme tariffs on Italian pasta, once floated at over 100%, have been significantly scaled back to much lower levels after industry cooperation and international pushback, easing pressure on American shoppers and foreign producers alike. Trump continues to publicly defend tariffs as a strategic economic tool, saying losing the ability to levy them would be a serious blow to U.S. leverage and national interests. These moves come as the administration's overall tariff strategy remains in flux, even as the Supreme Court prepares to rule on the legal basis for the president's broad tariff authority, a decision that could reshape how and whether these levies can be used long-term. Why this matters: tariffs affect consumer prices, global trade relationships, and U.S. industry competitiveness. Delays and reductions ease near-term cost pressures for Americans, but leave open bigger questions about future U.S. trade policy, retaliation from trading partners, and how Washington balances economic goals with political pressures. What to watch next? The Supreme Court decision on tariff authority, how partners like the EU and China respond, and whether these pauses become permanent or give way to new levies down the line. Tesla's electric vehicle sales have fallen for a second straight year, and in 2025 the company delivered fewer cars than it did in 2024, the weakest annual sales performance since 2022. This wasn't just a small dip. Fourth quarter deliveries were down about 15 to 16% from a year ago and below Wall Street forecasts, and full-year figures dropped roughly 8 to 9% overall. That decline has major implications because it means Tesla lost its place as the world's top electric vehicle seller to Chinese rival BYD, whose sales grew strongly while Tesla softened. The reasons behind the slump are practical. U.S. federal tax incentives for electric vehicles expired in late 2025, making Teslas less affordable for some buyers. At the same time, competition has intensified. Chinese and European automakers are offering more EVs at competitive prices, and some markets like Europe saw particularly weak Tesla demand. This matters to a U.S. and global audience because Tesla has long been seen as a bellwether for the EV industry. Slowing sales can signal broader shifts in consumer demand, international competition, and how future transportation markets evolve. It also affects investors, automakers with EV ambitions, and supply chains that have been recalibrating around electric vehicles. What to watch next is whether Tesla can reverse this trend in 2026 with updated models, new pricing strategies, or growth in other business areas like energy products and autonomous vehicle services, and whether the broader EV market sustains growth without federal incentives. Why London stocks just hit a record high and what it means for global markets. On the first full trading day of 2026, Britain's benchmark stock index, the FTSE 100, topped 10,000 points for the first time in history, marking a fresh all-time high as global markets kicked off the year with broad gains. That milestone didn't come out of nowhere. London equities had already racked up strong gains throughout 2025, closing the year with around a 22% rise, the best annual performance since 2009. The index's rally was driven by sectors like mining, defense, and major banks, companies that benefit when commodity prices are strong and investors seek steady earnings outside big tech growth stocks. Two big influences are helping lift the FTSE. One is global market optimism that has supported equities broadly as central banks signal possible interest rate cuts, making borrowing cheaper and boosting investor appetite for risk assets. The other is a relative rotation into markets like London that have more traditional industries and less exposure to ultra-expensive tech stocks that dominate U.S. indexes. Why this matters beyond the UK. London's stock market is a major global financial barometer, and its strength reflects broader investor confidence in European economies. For U.S. and international investors, a record FTSE signals healthy foreign equity markets, diversification opportunities, and sometimes better value compared with pricey U.S. tech shares. Several major Offshore wind developers are now in federal court fighting the U.S. government's decision to halt construction on large wind energy projects off the East Coast. Danish company Ørsted and its partner Skyborn Renewables have filed a lawsuit challenging the Interior Department's suspension of the lease for the Revolution Wind project, which was about 87% complete and expected to start delivering power this month. They are asking a judge to block the halt so work can continue while the case plays out. At the same time, Norwegian energy giant Equinor has sued over the halt to its Empire Wind project, now more than 60% built off the New York coast, also seeking a preliminary injunction so construction doesn't stop midstream. These legal challenges come after the Trump administration paused leases and ordered work stopped on 5 major U.S. offshore wind projects late last year, citing national security concerns about possible interference with radar systems, concerns government officials say need review before turbines are finished. The stakes are significant. These projects together represent tens of billions in investment, thousands of jobs, and renewable power expected to supply hundreds of thousands of American homes. The developers say stopping work now could cause substantial harm and violate federal law. For the U.S. and global audience, this isn't just a regulatory dispute, it touches on broader questions about energy policy, climate goals, economic impacts, and how national security concerns are balanced against clean energy development. What to watch next is how the courts rule on these injunction requests, and whether the government's national security argument holds up under legal scrutiny. Here is the latest tech news on Clicks, bringing its first smartphone and keyboard to CES 2026 in one clear update. Clicks, a company best known for making physical keyboard accessories for smartphones, is stepping into its first standalone phone hardware with a device called the Clicks Communicator, and it's premiering at CES 2026 in Las Vegas. Instead of chasing the big flagship trend, the Communicator is a *** compact Android smartphone built around a physical QWERTY keyboard, much like the classic BlackBerry devices of the past. The 4-inch screen and built-in keyboard are designed for people who want a focused messaging and communication experience handling apps like WhatsApp, Gmail, Telegram, and Slack without the endless scrolling and entertainment distractions of typical modern phones. The phone runs Android 16, supports 5G, has expandable storage and a decent battery for its size, and includes both front and rear cameras. Early reservation pricing is expected to be around $399, with a full retail price near $499. Will Smith is being sued by an electric violinist from his 2025 tour who alleges sexual harassment, wrongful termination, and retaliation. Brian King Joseph, a professional violinist and former America's Got Talent finalist, filed a complaint on December 30th in Los Angeles Superior Court, naming Smith and his company Treyball Studios Management. Joseph says he was hired to perform on Smith's Based on a True Story 2025 tour, but after raising concerns about what he describes as inappropriate behavior and a threatening incident involving his hotel room during a March 2025 tour stop, he was suddenly fired. According to the lawsuit, Joseph alleges that following the Las Vegas hotel incident, where he claims he found strange items and a note in his room that led him to fear an unwanted sexual encounter, he reported the situation to hotel security, the police non-emergency line, and Smith's management. Instead of support, he says he was shamed and then removed from the tour, causing him emotional distress, financial harm, reputational damage, and symptoms he describes as PTSD. Smith's attorney has strongly denied the allegations, calling them false, baseless, and reckless, and says Smith intends to defend himself using all legal avenues available. This case matters as it involves a high-profile entertainer facing serious workplace misconduct claims from someone he hired. And it comes amid increasing public and legal scrutiny of how touring artists and their teams manage personnel, safety, and professional boundaries. What to watch next is how the court evaluates the evidence in Joseph's complaint and whether this lawsuit leads to broader legal action or settlement discussions in the entertainment industry. Flu cases are climbing sharply across Texas this winter, and state data show influenza activity at high or very high levels, with the trend still rising as the season gets underway. Health officials and CDC tracking show the virus circulating widely in the community, with increases in positive tests, emergency room visits, and hospitalizations for flu-like symptoms in recent weeks. What's driving the surge is a new flu variant, known as the subclade K strain, that's now spreading nationally, and especially in parts of Texas. This variant isn't a completely different virus, but it has a mutated form of a common influenza, a type that is harder for this season as vaccine to fully block. Even though the flu shot still helps reduce severe illness and hospitalization, hospital visits for flu symptoms are up compared with earlier in the fall, and doctors in North Texas are reporting more cases than usual for this time of year. Children and older adults, groups typically more vulnerable to complications, are among those seeing rising infection numbers. This matters because flu activity in Texas reflects broader national and seasonal patterns, and when cases surge, it can put pressure on healthcare resources and increase the risk of serious complications, especially for people with weakened immune systems, chronic health conditions, infants, and older adults. The trend also suggests the U.S. could see a strong flu season overall, as more states report significant activity. The key things to watch next are whether flu cases peak or continue rising over the coming weeks, how hospitalizations trend, and whether vaccination rates improve, since getting a flu shot now can still help protect against severe illness as the season unfolds. And that's a wrap on the top 10 news stories for today, all in just 10 minutes. We've covered the biggest headlines from around the globe to keep you informed and ahead of the curve. It's so important to stay updated, and we're here to make that easy for you. If you found this quick rundown helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you fresh, concise news updates every single day, so you'll never miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, staying informed is staying ahead. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another daily briefing. Have a great day.